when we started off in 2016, this was only me and some other collaborators from public science. This is a Vetenskap och allmänhet, which is an institution which are actually trying to connect academics with the community, doing citizen science. I've also had help from media scholars, etc. But when we started off, it was a bit of a problem that we didn't have much information regarding how much fake news was actually around. In 2016, everybody was talking about fake news, but the extent of it was very unclear. And all the examples would come from the US and the election of Donald Trump. And I mean, still today, we're finding that it's not all that clear how big and how large and what it looks like, this threat, because the most studies comes from Twitter feeds and they come from some hashtags. And even, so to me, it was like, how much is this a threat to us all? And there's now some current research highlighting how even before the American election, most people didn't share much fake news. So what we did was that when I got the question from public science, what would you do if you had a couple of thousand research assistants? I would ask them to go to their news feeds and feed me their latest news, so I could get some good data on what is actually happening on the platforms where they're usually reading their news. So this is what we did. We have now asked some 7,000 students in Sweden, and they posted some 7,000 news that they have been they've been harvesting from their own news feeds. And there's actually an ongoing one in Denmark at the moment where we have 3,000 students who's also been going into their news feeds where they commonly find and read their news. Doing this, we also wanted them to get something out of it, so we helped them by setting up a digital tool which was based on the ideas that comes actually from history education and how to produce historical thinking and double-checking information, and also from fact-checkers and the works of Sam Weinberg and Sarah McGrew. And how, when you are facing a news, then you need to think about three things. What is the source? Who's behind this information? What is the evidence? Is this hard evidence? Does it relate to science? Or is this more stuff that somebody's actually trying to manipulate you in some ways? And finally, if you feel insecure, double-check the information with an outside source. So that's what they also did during this, and they would be working together. This is a school setting, so the data is of course a bit biased that way because they are in a public situation. So we're not going into their news feeds in their closed environment at home. But what we found was actually quite striking, and to us it was a bit of a surprise. We found that most students would read and share news from established news media in Sweden. They would not be from some obscure dark paths of the internet. It was actually mainly news from the established news media. And also the ones that they would find on Facebook and on Instagram would also come from established news media. Other scholars have now done some deep interviews with students, and they say that, well, these results make sense because young people don't want to look stupid to their friends. So you don't share things that makes you look stupid. And if you share fake, you might be doing it to look at this stupid fake thing. And that's, as you know, quite a bit of the online research has not been sort of taken that account into, does people really believe what they spread, or do they spread it because they think it's fun? What we also found was when they rated the sources of information, we found that they rated especially the morning newspapers as really credible news sources. And this was also a problem to us because a lot of the students could not read the most credible news because they were behind paywalls. Now we're actually trying to lobby to lower the paywalls for school children, and we'll see what happens after Christmas. Maybe Santa will come with something. So anyway, looking at the news feeds, and in education we talk about media and information literacy. We see a shift where everybody in education used to be talking about digital competence, which was like use the computers. Now that has shifted towards digital literacy, understanding what is actually, how do we read all this information, how do we use it? And media literacy is about the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create content in digital environments. That's media literacy. Civic online reasoning, which we are looking quite a bit into, is actually responding to the questions, who is behind this information? What is the evidence? What do other sources say? And the way that we are defining digital civic literacy, which is a mix of these ones, but also disciplinary literacy, we say that this is the ability to find and engage with digital civic information in critical and constructive ways. Not just being critical, but also actually taking something with you after you have been looking into the data or the information. We did this in 2017. We had some 6,000. We did a large scale study, and then we had a smaller set in 2018 before the Swedish election. And before they went into their own news feeds, we did a small scale test on them. We asked them a few questions about their attitudes, and we also had them perform a test. And here's the sourcing thing, like, who's the source? Is the source here a reporter that wants to inform you with news? Or is this somebody who actually trying to sell you something? Is it an ad? And they're actually noted as ads in this one. Regarding evidence, they're supposed to be thinking about, does this image provide good evidence that smoking causes cancer and can have side effects? And this is also, a way of corroborating evidence, where we're asking the students to look into this information on this web page. You can open up a new tab and understand, is this a reliable source regarding climate change? And this page that they're supposed to be corroborating, double checking, was actually deemed in 2011 as the most deceitful site in Swedish society. Vetenskaplig förvillare. What we find when we look at the data here, we find that the impact of the study was not that great. So going through your own news feeds, evaluating your news feeds, did have a good effect on their own ratings about how good they were at searching information. So that's a good one. They think that they're really good when they start, and then they go out and this is pretty difficult. And then they become a bit more aware about that. So that's a good attitude one. But we didn't see an impact on lateral reading, which we had been hoping for. So that's still to go. We also find higher ratings on internet info reliability, how they rate how they rate the credibility of online information. And we find in other studies that it is actually a way to, the ones who rate this high are usually not very good in performing. But we think that this might have to do with the fact that they've been actually going through all these established news media news and not, so therefore they sort of rate it high. What we also find, if we look here in the total number of correct, we find that actually some programs are better than others. Students in the humanities and arts programs, students doing natural sciences, and students on the technological programs in Sweden are doing better than others. And baseline here is a vocational training. We also find that the ones who are rating it very important to have access to credible news do this better. And we find this sort of throughout. Then the smoking one differs. So debunking the manipulated image, we find the opposite. Here we instead find that it's not good to be in the theoretical programs. Here it's better to be in vocational training. Here it's not good to rate credibility as important. So this is like the total opposite. And we're trying to figure out now, what is this? What does this mean and what can we do about it? If we put together two studies, one of which Åsa was mentioning, we did this as a way of understanding the items that we could use in attitudes and skills. And this is an online test, which we've done with 483 students, and now we've repeated this in an online environment with 1222 adults. And we asked them who you are, your background information, your attitudes regarding online information, and then we test them. And here in this one, we have some 7 items that we test them on. More complicated than the ones I showed, but also similar to the ones I've shown already. What we find is that predictors for good performance in this is the ones who also rate access to credible news very high. We find that especially people with higher education, more than 3 years of university, are better at navigating the information. We find that humanities and arts scholars and natural sciences, or the ones who have an orientation towards the two, are better than, for instance, the social sciences and health. Same thing with youth, actually. Social sciences program doesn't help much. It ends up somewhere in between vocational training and humanities and art. And also the ones who say that they've been working with fact-checking are better than other people in performing. Predictors for poor performance, instead, is young people with high self-rated internet searchability. They are the worst. And then the ones who see online information as quite credible. So what we're finding here is a bit of an overconfidence, but maybe that's the way of the world. That's the way it should be. If you're a teenager, you should know best. But we're also sort of finding that there's a humbleness towards other people's knowledge, that thinking that I don't know everything myself. I need to go to reliable sources to get more information. So it's actually on a scale from being pretty arrogant to being humble and open-minded. Now we're trying now, coming from this, we're trying now to design things to support digital civic literacy. What we are testing now is, for instance, if you can use bad news game online in education to inoculate people. This is a game designed by Rode Oosterwold, Jon Rosenberg, and Sander van der Linden. And they've tested it online. They have some promising results, but they haven't tried it in classroom settings so far. So we are trying to do that and helping them with that. We've translated this to Swedish, so now we're currently having a comparison in online environments between Sweden, Poland, and Germany. And we're going to test this in classrooms to see if we can actually help them design education, drawing from what seems to be working a bit in an online environment to see if this could actually be a way in classrooms to inoculate students by giving them a small sample of manipulative strategies so that they learn to identify manipulative strategies. Another thing that we are doing is that we're testing a tool that is used across the globe by professional fact checkers. It was developed by AFP, the French press agency, and it was developed to help them debunk videos and online information. So we've been piloting this in Sweden, and then we will run it in Romania, Spain, and France in classrooms to see if it works. And then we're also trying to have a set of tests and feedback systems so that people can actually answer the questions regarding their attitudes towards information, test themselves, get feedback, and then redo the testing to sort of see if this helps. So I'm going to show you a bit of what is going on. So what is going on first is the bad news game. I don't know if you've seen this already, but it's a simple online thing. It's open access. You can go out and play it whenever you like. For teachers, for educators, you can download a simple file. Oh, okay. So I'm not sharing my screen here. There you go. I'm sorry. So here's the online game. So for educators, you just download it. The whole thing says like you should work in pairs, and then you get to play the game. And you go, hey, let's play. So what you should do here is that you should collect as many followers as possible, have some sort of credibility, and then just try to navigate this in a way. So you're probably frustrated. Yeah, let's post a tweet. No, I'm not angry enough on the government. Maybe mainstream media, one massive conspiracy. Yeah, tweet this. Whoa, great start. I'm getting a few followers here. So that's what do I do next? Answer some questions. I'm ready. Let's go. No, thanks. I don't want to be part of a study. So let's get started. Fake an official Twitter account. Another one. Let's see if there's a better one. Not that one. Tweet this one. I got it. So this is, you get the idea. And the thing is that they've been collecting like 6 different manipulative strategies online, and they find that when people use this in the pre and post test, people tend to become a bit more skeptic about the fake tweets. which is kind of good. And then we have another one. This is the InVid, which is a plugin, so anyone can download it. And you will find that when you download it, it will help. There will be, here's the plugin. So you run it with the interactive, and here are some interactive ways of doing tutorials. So here's an image that you can use the fake news debunker by InVid to check it out. Let's double check. There's something funky going on with this image here. What then could it be? Well, so if you do somebody gave me Spanish. Okay, I'm sorry. This says actually the most expensive painting ever sold. That's what it says when you do a reverse search on Google. What you will find if you do it the same search using another reverse search like Bing, you will see a different read. So this is the original image, and what is behind him is not angst. So different search engines uses different algorithms. So we're hoping that we can help students to have like visual literacy in using these ways of navigating information. There are also some other cool things that you can do here. If you have this type of image, for instance, this guy looks really happy before he's going out to bomb people. If you do a reverse image search on that, you might not find your best hit, but you can get some information if you do a forensic search. The forensic search gives you some information about that there are some parts of this image that has been manipulated. So you can sort of understand that there's something funky going on here, maybe. And if this is the ones who are working with this say that this is not 100% sure, for sure. There are insecurities here. But it sort of helps you understand, okay, so there are ways of debunking information, or at least looking carefully at images, which you can use to think more carefully about what is going on. And then we had this thing with the self-test. We ask people what is news and what is an ad, and then they say, I think that this is commercial. You can look at some videos. This is stuff that we've been testing at the moment. So here we have, there will be no sound to this, but people will look at this and they say, well, this looks a bit fake perhaps. So you put in, they say that this is manipulated, and then they answer the questions, how sure are you about your response here? And then they go to the next question. And the next question would be another one. How about this guy? Is this a fake video or is this a real video? We're also, within this feedback system, building short videos that should help people look at the source, look at the evidence, and do a comparison, and then see where this ends up. But this is a lot of things that are like work in progress. There are a few, we actually have been speculating to what extent it fits with science curiosity as well, because it seems like it's kind of a mindset where you are curious about scientific evidence, or at least facts explained somewhere else. And we are now going through this and trying to, if I'm just going to have some conclusions or concluding remarks here, what you see in the background here is actually authentic things that students found pre-Swedish elections. So there's a lot of fake going on in the background here. They did find some fakes. It was not all credible news. But anyway, for education, we see some challenges. One of them is subject-specific knowledge and what we call disciplinary literacy. Critical thinking has been a term that has been used widely in education, saying that if people just become better critical thinkers, this will be sort of a vaccine against fake news. Well, the problem with critical thinking is that critical thinking is very subject-specific. And when we've tested this on students, we've gone through the national test, and we did this is a correlation, but a correlation analysis highlights how actually people who are good in thinking critically in physics do not necessarily be good in thinking critically in history or in Swedish or in maths. The reasonings, the critical reasoning in different domains is domain specific. It has to do with subject specific knowledge. So we need to have more disciplinary literacy among everyone. Everybody needs to learn this. If you go to Jim Cummings, which is a very famous researcher in literacy, he says that the best ways to overcome socioeconomic problems for kids is to have literacy, read early and much, and subject-specific literacy, like learn more academic reading, and that's like the most important factor that they can find in current research. So reading and reading disciplinary texts. What we're also thinking now is that since we have students in some theoretical programs are very good in some things, and then we have students in other programs that are good in other things, but then they are bad on other aspects. Maybe we need to consider a bit of a more tailor-made educational interventions and tailor-made schooling, where if you go to the natural sciences programs, then maybe you should learn to deal a bit more with manipulated images, while if you go to a vocational training, then maybe you should learn more about natural sciences and learn to think about the mathematical literacy, etc. So it might be that we need to consider more about the tailor-made education. Lateral reading is very important, and we're trying hard. There has been some interventions recently by Sarah McGrew. 8 hours of training made a few become better at lateral reading, not a majority. So we're struggling. The ability to identify manipulative strategies, the inoculation theories, there is something going on here which may be helpful, but the effects so far are not as good as they should be. And at the end of the day, it seems like this credibility importance might be linked to a humble mindset of self-reflection, science curiosity, and appreciation of credible news sources, and how we can sort of nurture this mindset in education is a pretty big challenge for the future. Thank you.